Welcome back to GCCKids Connection, where we are connecting with each other while you're home from school. We're connecting with some really cool books, and most importantly, we're connecting with God's Word. We're so glad you're here.
Well, hi kids, welcome back. And we're ready to begin chapters 12 and 13 in our story called Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, where we're finding out about a good friend, Wilbur. The title for chapter 12 is called A Meeting. One evening, a few days after the writing had appeared in Charlotte's Web, the spider called a meeting of all the animals in the barn cellar. I shall begin by calling the roll. Wilbur? Here, said the pig. Gander? Here, 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 said the gander. You sound like three ganders, muttered Charlotte. Why can't you just say here? Why do you have to repeat everything? It's my idiosyncrasy, replied the gander. Goose, said Charlotte. Here, 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 said the goose. Charlotte glared at her. Goslings 1 through 7. Bee-bee-bee, 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 said the goslings. This is getting to be quite a meeting, said Charlotte. Anyone would think that we had 3 ganders, 3 geese, and 21 goslings. Sheep? Hey-ya, answered the sheep all together. Lambs? Hee-ya, answered the lambs all together. Templeton? No answer. Templeton? No answer. Well, we're all here except the rat, said Charlotte. I guess we can proceed without him. Now, all of you must have noticed what's been going on around here the last few days. The message I wrote in Wilbur's Web praising Wilbur has been received. The Zuckermans have fallen for it, and so has everybody else. Zuckerman thinks Wilbur is an unusual pig, and therefore he won't want to kill him and eat him. I dare say my trick will work, and Wilbur's life will be saved. Hooray! Cried everybody. Thank you very much, said Charlotte. Now, I called this meeting in order to get some suggestions. I need a new idea for the web. People are already getting tired of reading some pig. If anybody can think of another message or remark, I'd be glad to weave it into my web. Any suggestions for a new slogan? How about Pig Supreme, said one of the lambs. Oh, no good, said Charlotte. It sounds like a rich dessert. How about Terrific, 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 said the goose. Cut that down to one terrific, and I think it'll do nicely, said Charlotte. I think terrific might impress the Zuckermans. But Charlotte, said Wilbur, I'm not terrific. That doesn't make a particle of difference, replied Charlotte. Not a particle. People believe everything they read in print. Does anybody here know how to spell terrific? I think, said the gander, that it's T-double-E-double-R-double-E-double-F-double-E-double-C-C-C-C-C. What kind of acrobat do you think I am? Said Charlotte in disgust. I would have to do a St. Vitus dance to weave all of those words and letters into my web. Sorry, said the gander. Then the oldest sheep spoke up. I agree that there should be something new in the web if Wilbur's life is to be saved. If Charlotte needs help in finding words, I think she can get help from our friend Templeton. The rat visits the dump regularly and has access to old magazines. He can tear out bits of advertisements and bring them back to the barn cellar so that Charlotte has new material. Good idea, said Charlotte, but I'm not sure Templeton will be willing to help. You know how he is, always looking out for himself, never thinking of the other fellow. I bet I can get him to help, said the old lamb. I'll appeal to his baser instincts, of which he has plenty. Here he comes now. Everybody quiet down while I put the matter to him. The rat entered the barn the way he always did, creeping along close to the wall. What's up? He asked, seeing all the animals assembled. We're holding a directors' meeting, replied the old sheep. Well, break it up, said Templeton. Meetings bore me. And the rat began to climb the rope that hung against the wall. Look, said the old sheep. Next time you go to the dump, Templeton, bring back a clipping from a magazine. Charlotte needs new words so that she can write messages in the web to save Wilbur's life. Let him die, said the rat. I should worry. You'll worry all right when winter time comes, said the sheep. You'll worry all right in 0 degrees mornings next January when Wilbur is dead and nobody comes down here with a nice pail of warm slops to pour into the trough. Wilbur's leftover food is your chief source of supply, Templeton. You know that. Wilbur's food is your food. Therefore, Wilbur's destiny is your destiny. If Wilbur is killed and his trough stands empty day after day, you'll grow so thin that we can look right through your stomach and see objects on the other side. Templeton's whiskers quivered. Well, maybe you're right, he said gruffly. I'm making a trip to the dump tomorrow afternoon. I'll bring back a magazine clipping if I can find one. Thanks, said Charlotte. The meeting is now adjourned. I have a busy evening ahead of me. I've got to tear my web apart and write terrific. Wilbur blushed. But I'm not terrific, Charlotte. I'm just average for a pig. You're terrific as far as I'm concerned, replied Charlotte sweetly, and that's what counts. You're my best friend, and I think you're sensational. Now stop arguing and go to sleep. Far into the night, while the other creatures slept, Charlotte worked on her web. First, she ripped out a few of the orb lines near the center. She left the radio lines alone as they were needed for support. As she worked, her 8 legs were a great help to her. So were her teeth. She loved to weave, and she was an expert at it. When she was finished ripping things out, her web looked something like this. A spider can produce several kinds of thread. She uses a dry, tough thread for foundation lines, and she uses a sticky thread for snare lines, the ones that catch flies and insects. Charlotte decided to use her dry thread for writing the message. If I write the word terrific with sticky thread, she thought, every bug that comes along will get stuck and it'll spoil the effect. Now let's see. First, the letter T. Charlotte climbed to the point at the top left. Swinging her spinnerets into position, she attached a thread and then dropped down. As she dropped, her spinning tubes went into action and she let out a thread. At the bottom, she attached the thread. This formed the upright part of the letter T. Charlotte was not satisfied, however, so she climbed back up and made a second attachment right next to the first, and then she carried the line down so that she had a double line instead of a single line. It'll show up better if I do the whole thing in double lines, she said. She climbed back up, moved over about an inch to the left, touched her spinnerets to the web, and then carried a line across to the right, forming the top part of the T. She repeated this, making it double. Her 8 legs were very busy helping. Now for the letter E. Charlotte got so interested in her work, she began to talk to herself as though she were cheering herself on. If you had been sitting quietly in the barn cellar that evening, you might have heard something like this. Now for the R. Up we go, attach, descend, payout line, woo, attach, good. Up you go, repeat, attach, descend, payout line, whoa girl, steady now, attach, climb, attach. Over to the right, oh, payout line, attach. Now to the right, down, swing a loop around and around. Now on to the left, attach, climb, repeat. Okay. Easy, keep those lines together. Now then, out and down, and the leg of the R, payout line, whoa, attach, ascend, repeat. Good girl. And so, talking to herself, the spider worked on her difficult task. When it was completed, she felt hungry. She ate a small bug that she had been saving, and then she slept. Next morning, Wilbur rose and stood beneath his web. He breathed in the morning air. Drops of dew, catching the sun, made the web stand out clearly. When Lurvy arrived with breakfast, there was the handsome pig and over him, woven neatly in block letters, was the word terrific. Another miracle. Lurvy rushed and called Mr. Zuckerman. Mr. Zuckerman rushed and called Mrs. Zuckerman. Mrs. Zuckerman ran to the phone and called the Arbles. The Arbles climbed in their truck and hurried on over. Everybody stood at the pig pen and stared at the web and read the word over and over, while Wilbur, who really felt terrific, stood quietly swelling up his chest and swinging his snout from side to side. Terrific, breathed Zuckerman in joyful admiration. Edith, you better phone the reporter of the Weekly Chronicle and tell him what has happened. He'll want to come down and see this. He may even want to bring a photographer. There isn't a pig in the whole state as terrific as this pig. The news spread. People who had journeyed to see Wilbur when he was some pig came back again to see him now that he was terrific. That afternoon, when Mr. Zuckerman went to milk the cows and clean out the tie-ups, he was still thinking about the wondrous pig he owned. Lurvy, he called, there is to be no more cow manure thrown down in that pig pen. I have a terrific pig. I want that pig to have clean, bright straw every day for bedding. Understand? Yes, sir, said Lurvy. Furthermore, said Mr. Zuckerman, I want you to start building a crate for Wilbur. I've decided to take the pig to the county fair in September. Make the crate large and paint it green with gold letters. What should it say? They should say, Zuckerman's famous pig. Lurvy picked up a pitchfork and walked around to get some clean straw. Having such an important pig was going to mean plenty of extra work. He could see that. Below the apple orchard at the end of the path was a dump where Mr. Zuckerman threw all sorts of trash and stuff that nobody wanted anymore. Here, in a small clearing hidden by young alders and wild raspberry bushes, was an astonishing pile of old bottles and empty tin cans and dirty rags and bits of metal, broken bottles and broken hinges and broken springs and dead batteries and last month's magazines, old discarded dish mops and tattered overalls and rusty spikes and leaky pails and forgotten stoppers and useless junk of all kinds, including the wrong-sized crank for a broken ice cream freezer. Templeton knew the dump and he liked it. There were good hiding places there, excellent cover for a rat. And there was usually a tin can that still had some food clinging to the inside. Templeton was down there now, rummaging around, and when he returned to the barn, he carried in his mouth an advertisement that he had torn from a crumpled old magazine. How's this? He asked, showing the ad to Charlotte. It says crunchy. Crunchy would be a good word for your web. Just the wrong idea entirely, replied Charlotte. Couldn't be worse. We don't want Zuckerman to think Wilbur is crunchy. He might start thinking about crispy, crunchy bacon and tasty ham. That would put ideas in his head. We must advertise Wilbur's noble qualities, not his tastiness. Go get another word, please, Templeton. The rat looked disgusted, but he sneaked away to the dump and was back in a while with a strip of cotton cloth. How's this? He asked. It's a label from an old shirt. Charlotte examined the label. It said, pre-shrunk. I'm sorry, Templeton, she said, but pre-shrunk is out of the question. We want Zuckerman to think Wilbur is nicely filled out, not all shrunk up. I'll have to ask you to try again. What do you think I am, a messenger boy? Grumbled the rat. I'm not going to spend all of my time chasing down to the dump after advertising material. Just once more, please, said Charlotte. Tell you what to do, said Templeton. I know where there's a package of soap flakes in the woodshed. It has writing on it. I'll bring you a piece of the package. He climbed the rope that hung along the wall and disappeared through a hole in the ceiling, and when he came back, he had a strip of blue and white cardboard in his teeth. There, he said triumphantly. How's that? Charlotte read the words. With new radiant action. What does it mean? Asked Charlotte, who had never used soap flakes in her life. How should I know? Said Templeton. You asked me for words and I brought them. I suppose the next thing you'll want me to do is fetch you a dictionary. Together they studied the soap ad. With new radiant action, repeated Charlotte slowly. Wilbur, she called. Wilbur, who was asleep in the straw, jumped up. Run around, commanded Charlotte. I want to see you in action. I want to see if you're radiant. Wilbur raced to the end of his yard. Now turn back faster, said Charlotte. Wilbur galloped back, his skin shone and his tail fine in a tight curl. Jump into the air, said Charlotte. Wilbur jumped as high as he could. Keep your knees straight and touch the ground with your ears, said Charlotte. Wilbur obeyed. Do a backflip with a half twist in it, cried Charlotte. Wilbur went over backwards, writhing and twisting as he went. Okay, Wilbur, said Charlotte. You can go back to sleep. Okay, Templeton, the soap ad will do, I guess. I'm not sure Wilbur's exactly radiant, but it's interesting. Actually, said Wilbur, I feel radiant. Do you? Said Charlotte, looking at him with affection. Well, you're a good little pig, and radiant you shall be. I'm in this thing pretty deep now. I might as well go to the limit. Tired from his romp, Wilbur lay down in the clean straw. He closed his eyes. The straw seemed scratchy and not at all comfortable like the cow manure, which was so delightful to sleep in. So he pushed the straw to one side and stretched out on the manure. Wilbur sighed. It had been a busy day, his first day of being terrific. Dozens of people had visited his yard during the afternoon, and he had to stand and pose and look terrific. Now he was tired. Fern had arrived and seated herself quietly on her stool in the corner. Tell me a story, Charlotte, said Wilbur as he lay waiting for sleep to come. Tell me a story. So Charlotte, although she too was tired, did what Wilbur wanted. Once upon a time, she began, I had a beautiful cousin who managed to build her web across a small stream. One day, a tiny fish leaped into the air and got tangled in the web. My cousin was very much surprised, of course. The fish was thrashing wildly. My cousin hardly dared tackle it, but she did. She swooped down and threw great masses of wrapping material around the fish and fought bravely to capture it. Did she succeed? Asked Wilbur. It was a never-to-be-forgotten battle, said Charlotte. There was the fish, caught only by one fin, and its tail wildly thrashing and shining in the sun. There was the web, sagging dangerously under the weight of the fish. How much did the fish weigh? Asked Wilbur eagerly. I don't know, said Charlotte. There was my cousin, slipping in, dodging out, beaten mercilessly over the head by the wildly thrashing fish, dancing in, dancing out, throwing her threads and fighting hard. First she threw to the left, around the tail. The fish thrashed back. Then she threw to the right. The fish lashed back. Then she dodged to one side and threw a right and another right to the fin. Then a hard left to the head while the web sank and swayed and stretched. Then what happened? Asked Wilbur. Nothing, said Charlotte. The fish lost the fight. My cousin wrapped it up so tightly it couldn't budge. Then what happened? Asked Wilbur. Nothing, said Charlotte. My cousin kept the fish for a while, and then when she got ready, she ate it. Tell me another story, begged Wilbur. So Charlotte told him a story about another cousin of hers who was an aeronaut. What's an aeronaut? Asked Wilbur. A balloonist, said Charlotte. My cousin used to stand on her head and let out enough thread to make a balloon, and then she would let go and was lifted into the air and carried by the warm wind. Is that true? Asked Wilbur. Are you just making it up? Oh, it's true, replied Charlotte. I have some very remarkable cousins. And now, Wilbur, it's time for you to go to sleep. Sing something, begged Wilbur, closing his eyes. So Charlotte sang a lullaby while crickets chirped in the grass and the barn grew dark. This was the song she sang. Sleep, sleep, my love, my only, deep, deep in the dung and the dark. Be not afraid and be not lowly. This is the hour when frogs and thrushes praise the world from the woods and the rushes. Rest from care, my one and only, deep in the dung in the dark. But Wilbur was already asleep. When the song ended, Fern got up and went home. Well, now we've had 2 signs in Charlotte's Web. First, Wilbur was some pig, and now he's terrific. Well, sounds like it's getting pretty interesting. For your activity today, our character spotlight is Charlotte. What are 3 words you would use to describe Charlotte? We know pretty much about Charlotte now. So how would you describe Charlotte? And then one of the thinking questions is, Wilbur felt radiant. Find a picture of something or take a selfie that shows what you think you would look like if you were radiant. And then down at the bottom for connecting with some Bible truth, it says Charlotte wrote words in her web that were words to describe Wilbur. He was some pig. He was terrific. What words would you use to describe what God is like? In the Bible, you can find lots of verses that describe attributes of God or tell us what God is like. So think of some of those words that you already know that describe what God is like. And then down at the bottom, there are some verses that will help you think of some words that describe what our God is like. So have fun with that, and I'll see you next time when we find out what's going to happen next with Wilbur and Charlotte. See you next time.